Okay, let's get into one of the most unbelievable hijacking stories you'll ever hear. The date is September 29th, 1988. What was supposed to be just a routine flight in Brazil turned into an absolutely insane, high-stakes drama in the sky. This is the story of VASP Flight 375.
We're going to start right at the most intense moment, because you really have to see it to believe it. Yep, that is a commercial airliner, a Boeing 737, flying completely upside down. It's in the middle of a full barrel roll, a maneuver it was never ever built to do. Inside that cockpit, a pilot is pulling off a desperate last-ditch move to save every single person on board.
And if that wasn't wild enough, as the plane comes out of that roll and starts to nosedive, it's hitting speeds over 540 miles an hour. Now that is way, way beyond its limits. The wings are shaking so violently, the entire aircraft is literally seconds away from being ripped to shreds in midair.
So the big question is, how on earth did we get here? This wasn't some kind of mechanical failure, and it wasn't pilot error. No, this was a result of a terrifyingly calculated plan to turn a passenger plane with 105 people inside into a guided missile aimed at the very heart of the Brazilian government. The hijacker's goal was terrifyingly specific. Step 1, hijack the flight. Step 2, force it to the capital, Brasilia. And Step 3, crash it directly into the Planalto Palace. This was never about ransom money. It was a straight-up assassination attempt on the president of Brazil, José Sarney.
Now, to understand why anyone would come up with a plan this extreme, you have to understand what was going on in Brazil in the late 80s. The country was basically in a free fall. It was this perfect storm of political chaos and economic collapse, a period so bad that historians actually call it the lost decade.
You see, Brazil's big dream of a new democracy went south, fast. After decades of military rule, the guy they elected president died before he could even take office. So his VP, José Sarney, gets the job, and he's immediately facing an absolute economic catastrophe. Hyperinflation was out of control. We're talking over 400%. Your money was becoming worthless overnight, and jobs were just vanishing. And this created this huge gap between the government and the people. You'd have President Sarney on TV talking about these complicated economic plans, but for regular Brazilians, the reality was grim. They were dealing with unemployment, an eviction notice on the table, and struggling to feed their families. It was like they were living in two different countries.
And one of those regular people was a 28-year-old guy named Raimundo Nonato. Now, he wasn't some known criminal or a political radical. He was a farm worker. People who knew him said he was quiet and polite, but on the inside, he was at a breaking point. He blamed the president personally for his family's suffering, and he felt that only a huge, violent act would get anyone's attention.
And so, on the morning of September 29th, with a .32 caliber revolver packed away in his bag, Raimundo Nonato headed to the airport in Belo Horizonte to set his plan in motion.
And you know what's crazy? It was incredibly easy. Security back then was nothing like it is today. There were no metal detectors for a lot of passengers, no X-ray machines. Nonato just walked right through, got on the plane, and took his seat with a loaded gun. The most critical failure of the day happened before the plane even took off.
About 20 minutes after takeoff, Nonato makes his move. He storms the cockpit, actually firing his gun through the door to get in. He holds the pilots at gunpoint and demands they fly to Brasilia. But the captain, Fernando Murillo, was an ex-military pilot, and he kept a cool head. While pretending to adjust the plane's controls, he discreetly switched the transponder code to 7500. That's the universal, silent signal that tells the whole world we're being hijacked.
That signal worked immediately. Air traffic control starts calling the plane, asking what's going on. Nonato starts to panic. He orders the pilots not to answer. But the first officer, Salvador Evangelista, maybe just out of pure instinct, moves his hand toward the radio. In that split second, Nonato fires, and Evangelista was killed instantly.
So now, on the ground, everything escalates. It's a confirmed hijacking, a crew member is dead, and the plane is pointed directly at the capital. The Brazilian Air Force kicks into high gear. From an Air Force base just 60 kilometers from Brasilia, they scramble a Mirage 3 fighter jet. Its mission is simple: get in the air, find that Boeing 737, and prepare for the absolute worst-case scenario. And that fighter pilot wasn't just sent up there to observe. He had a direct order that came from President Sarney himself. And the order was chilling. If you can't get that plane to turn away from the capital, you are authorized to shoot it down. He was ordered to kill all 105 people on board to prevent a bigger disaster on the ground. So let's just think about Captain Murillo's situation for a second. His co-pilot is dead right next to him.
A gunman is holding a revolver to his head. And now, flying just off his wing is a fighter jet armed with missiles. I mean, what do you even do in a situation like that?
He tried to reason with Nonato. He pointed at the fuel gauge, showing him that it was dropping fast. This was a short flight. They just didn't have enough gas to make it to Brasilia. He convinced him to land at a nearby airport to refuel. But as they started their descent, Nonato got paranoid. He thought it was a trap. He jams the gun into Murillo's head and screams, "Go back towards Brasilia."
At this point, Captain Murillo is completely out of options. So he makes his final, desperate move. Drawing on his old military training, he yanks the controls and sends the massive jet into that full barrel roll. The G-force threw Nonato right out of the cockpit. Then, Murillo pushed the nose down, sending the plane into that terrifying, high-speed dive. The plane was just screaming towards the earth, dropping almost 30,000 feet in moments. Nonato was thrown to the back of the cabin, completely disoriented. And then, at just 3,700 feet above the ground, Captain Murillo somehow pulled the plane out of the dive, leveled off, and lined it up for what had to be the most important landing of his life. Miraculously, he gets the plane on the ground safely, even though it's been stressed to its absolute breaking point. But this is far from over. Nonato is dazed, yeah, but he's still armed, and he's still got a plane full of hostages. The plane is immediately surrounded by police, and a tense standoff on the tarmac begins.
And for the next 5 hours, it's this incredibly tense negotiation. You've got Nonato, who's demanding a new plane and insisting that Captain Murillo has to be the one to fly it. You've got the police, who are trying to talk him down while also setting up snipers. And then you have Captain Murillo just trying to keep himself and everyone else alive.
Eventually, they reach a deal. But as Nonato is coming off the plane, he uses Captain Murillo and 3 flight attendants as a human shield. It's impossible to get a clean shot. A sniper takes a risky shot anyway and misses. All hell breaks loose. Nonato shoots Captain Murillo in the leg, then the police fire again, hitting Nonato and finally ending the siege. And here's the final surreal twist to this absolutely unbelievable day. The hijacker, Raimundo Nonato, and the hero pilot he tried to kill, Captain Fernando Murillo, were both loaded into the very same ambulance and rushed to the hospital together. You know, the story of VASP Flight 375 is, first and foremost, a story about the incredible heroism of a pilot who saved 104 lives. But it also brings up a really difficult question. Raimundo Nonato's actions were horrific, no question. But they were born from a very real desperation that was shared by millions of people at the time. And it leaves you wondering, where exactly is the line between a desperate act of protest and an act of terror?